Hello and welcome back to another lesson. This lesson is a lesson that I teach to all of my classes. However, it varies in difficulty depending on the class that you're in. So let me go ahead and get started on this. This is grid drawings, and grid drawings is very simple. A grid drawing is whenever you take a grid, which is a lined piece of paper that has boxes on it. Basically, it's a bunch of boxes lined out, evenly spaced apart, and that's a grid. And a grid drawing is when you take a grid and you overlay it onto an image and you transfer the image over block by block, and it creates something that looks similar to this. This is one of my 6th grade examples that I have. Students started over here, lined out a grid over top of SpongeBob and transferred it over block by block. And that's what a grid drawing is. You don't try to tackle the entire picture all at once. Instead, you focus one block at a time, fill in what you see in the first block over on the other block. Finish drawing in that block, and then you move over to the next block, and you continue on until the entire image is filled in. That's what a grid drawing is. And it's a very simple concept. The reason why grid drawings are so great for artists is because if you've ever tried to draw something and you just can't get the proportions just right, a grid drawing can help you with that. For instance, if you ever try to draw an eye, did you know that you can use a grid drawing technique and get an eye with perfect proportions every single time? Because it's almost guaranteed that you can't mess this up. If you follow the grid and you draw it exactly the way you see it inside of that one little square before you move over to the next square, you can't mess it up. It's impossible to mess up. In fact, using the grid drawing technique, you can create great images, and you don't even have to be a great artist. For instance, almost every single picture in this slide came from my students. And the ones that did come from my students came from students who were not proclaimed artists. Okay, they thought themselves as not being an artist. They even claimed that they could not draw. This student, an 8th grade student, did not pick up a pencil for anything other than homework. Literally, she came into my class and she said she couldn't draw. Using the grid drawing technique, I think she did pretty good. And just keep that in mind, because all the pictures that come from my students in this, they claim that they couldn't draw. So using grid drawing technique, even you can do this, even if you don't think you can. You can. Just follow the grid. And because I always get students to ask me, no, that is not a cigarette. It is a toothpick. Okay. So let me give you a live demonstration. Well, not really a live demonstration. This is more like a picture demonstration. But let me show you how you can do this one block at a time. You focus one block at a time. It doesn't matter which one. Just pick one. Pick a block. Draw the lines that you see and then move on to the next block. It's that simple. So let me show you. You start off one block at a time. Down there, it works its way up. And that's all a grid drawing is. One block at a time. When you get done with that block, then you move on over to the next block. That's all you have to do. That's it. That's all. It's a very simple concept. Now I'm going to show you some of the examples that my students have done. And again, not self-proclaimed artist. This student right here claimed he was not an artist. Using the grid drawing technique, I think he did a really good job. This is one of my 8th grade examples. This right here is a 7th grade example. Also, again, self-proclaimed, not an artist. These two are also 7th grade artworks, but one of them I believe was 6th grade that actually did this. They wanted to do a 7th grade lesson. Anyway, not bad. Then we have another 8th grade lesson. Okay, so I said that I give this lesson to all of my students, and I do. My 6th grade lessons, they do a grid drawing that is like this. They have a half page. You have the actual picture on one side. You have a blank grid on the other side, and you go through and you transfer it over. That's for my 6th grade lessons. My 7th grade lesson has pictures like this, where you actually have a full page printed off with an actual picture, and then you have a full page on a grid, and you transfer that over. And then my 8th grade lesson, you have self-picked pictures, or pictures that I have a big selection of, and you can go through and you can select different people or buildings or things like that. It depends on the lesson that I do throughout the year, because every semester I try to do something different. One class is people, one class is buildings, one class is landscapes. It's all different. So what your goal is today. Your goal, if you are in Art 1, you are going to be doing half-page grids. And this lesson lasts 2 days. So if you get done with one, go ahead, jump over and do the next one. So you're going to be doing as many as you can over the next 2 days. If you are in 7th grade, or my Art 2, you are going to be doing full-page grids. So what that is, you are going to be selecting an image from the folders that I have in the classroom or in the description down below, and you're going to be transferring those over to a blank grid, which again, in the classroom or in the description down below. Do not trace it, because I have thought ahead and I have made the blank grids a little bit smaller than the actual grids, which means if you do trace it, it's not going to trace over correctly because the blocks are just a little bit smaller. In 8th grade, what you're going to do, you're going to be selecting your very own picture, and you will need to either print it off if you're not in the classroom, or you need to select a picture from the wide selection of pictures I have available to you. You are then going to be placing a grid over it, and you're going to need a ruler to do that. Separate your grids by either 1/2 inch or 1 inch apart. That means that the grid lines are going to be either 1 inch or 1/2 inch apart. If you do 1/2 inch, you're going to have more grids, but you are also going to have less details that you put in. You do a wider block, you're going to have less grids, but it's going to be harder to get exactly right. So the choice is up to you. You're going to need to put a grid on your original picture that you're looking off of, and you're going to need to put a grid on your blank paper. Otherwise, well, you don't have anything transferred over to. Okay, that is your lesson. The links are going to be in the description down below, and I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to cut to the live demonstration so you can see what I mean by doing the lettering and the numbering. Thank you all very much for watching. If you enjoyed this lesson, go ahead, give me a thumbs up. If you have a comment you'd like to leave, go ahead, drop a comment down below. And if you would like to continue taking the class, go ahead and subscribe to our channel. We are going to be uploading all of my lessons that I typically teach throughout the next couple weeks. So thank you all very much. Okay guys, so this is the live demonstration over grid drawing. Now, there's a technique that I like to show to my students, and it does make it easier for some students. Now, for me personally, I don't really like this method, but for some students, it really does help. So that's why I'm going to show it. And that is numbering and lettering your grids. So what I mean by that is you start with one side, and you start with the letters, and you go A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, and I. And you do that going all the way down this side, and you do the same thing over here. Once you have the letters done, then you go through and you number it going from left to right on both sides. Okay, now once you have the letters and numbers on both your blank grid and the picture that you're going to be looking off of, what you do now is you try and you transfer over one block at a time exactly the way you see it to the empty block. So for instance, I know that this block right here is on I3. So I can jump straight down here, and it's just like playing bingo at this point. We go to I3, and this box lines up with that box. So all I have to do down here is I need to draw exactly what I see inside of that box right there. And we don't want to worry about anything else around it. We're just focused on that one box. So I'm going to jump down here, and I'm going to draw that exactly the way that I see it. So it goes up like that, goes down to a triangle, and curves up right there, and then I'm done. That's it. That's all I have to do with that box. So then I move over to the next box, and the next box is this one right here, and I draw that exactly the way I see it, and it curves up, Goes like that. Over and down. That's it. I'm done with that box. Now I can move on to the next box. So I'm done with that box. Let's move over to this one right here. And that one just has a little itty bit of the corner. That's it. I'm done with that one. Move on to the next one. This one right here. That one also just a little corner right there. And then I move on to the next box. And that's all that you have to do with a grid drawing. That is it. It's that simple. You just draw one box at a time exactly the way that you see it. Now, that is the correct way. Let me show you an incorrect way. And I have students do this all the time. The incorrect way is to look at this and say, oh, look, that's SpongeBob. I know he's got an eyeball right there, and he's got an eyeball right here, and he's got eyelashes, and he's got this big old honking nose, and he's super happy, and he's got buck teeth. And look, it's SpongeBob. I'm done. No, you're not. If I told you to draw SpongeBob, why would I give you the grid? Seriously, you have the grid on there for a reason. Use it. Don't just jump in and draw whatever you want. You have to follow the grid. That's what this is. Follow the grid, one box at a time. That's all. Don't just jump in there and draw things because you think, oh, wait, that looks good. No, that's not what you do. Do not do that. That is what you do. That's what you need to try to focus on. One box at a time. That's it. That's all you have to do. So this assignment that we're doing right here, this is a picture from one of the 6th grade assignments. So 6th grade or Art 1, you all will have an option to draw this image if you want. My other classes, there are other pages. There's a full-size grid drawings for my Art 2 class or my 7th grade. And then my Art 3 class, you do custom artworks. So you do either people portraits or you do buildings, you do landscapes, different things like that. So it really depends on the class that you're in. But that right there is the basic demonstration on how to do a grid drawing. Remember, one box at a time, that's it. Just focus on that one box. It doesn't matter about everything else. Okay, so for my Art 3 class, I'm going to be showing you how to make a grid. And you're going to need to make this grid on the blank piece of paper and on the piece of paper that you are looking off of, so the picture that you have printed off. That way you're going to have equal squares and you can transfer them over block by block. So you need the grid on both your blank paper and the picture you printed off or the picture you got from the classroom. Okay, so whenever you make the grid, you're going to need a ruler. And I like to tell my students that you need to either have your grid marks marked at every 1/2 inch or every 1 inch. And how you do that to make sure that they are squared up perfectly, you need to line up your ruler. The 0 mark right up here, the top of the ruler, is going to be at the edge of the paper. And then you need to measure down every 1/2 inch like this. So the 1/2 inch is in between the 0 and the 1. So it goes 0, top of the paper, 1/2 inch, which is in between, then 1, then 1 1/2, and 2, and so on like that. Now, once you get that side done, then you need to jump over here and do exactly the same thing on the other side. Now that you have the grids down on both the left and the right, you're going to need to take your ruler once again, and you're going to line up the lines and draw a line connecting those together. That's why you have the tick marks on there. Just like that. Okay, now that you have your grid lines going from left to right, what you're going to do, turn your paper and you're going to do exactly the same thing going down the left and the right again. That way you're going to make evenly spaced lines. Okay, now I only put the tick lines on the left side of the paper right here. And the reason why is because I always have students, and I say students because there's multiple ones, that go in here and they say, okay, all I need to do is do tick lines on one side and I can eyeball the rest of it. Well, no, you can't, because whenever you start to do that and you start to eyeball it, this is what happens. You go like this and you go whoop, and then you're like, okay, we're going to go down here like this, and that looks good, and we're going to keep going down like this, and then we're going to go down like this, and that seems about right. And then before long, you're going to realize, oh boy, that line is a lot bigger than that line. So now you got to fix it. So now you got to go up here and you got to go, okay, we got to fix that, and we got to fix that one. And you see what happens? It's not evenly spaced apart. So you have to make sure that you have those half-inch marks on all four sides. Don't just do one side. Don't just do two sides. Do all four sides with the half-inch marks. So let me go down here and finish this up, and I'll show you what it looks like comparatively. Okay, so now that we're done with the grid lines, you can see the difference. That is why you have to have the tick marks on all four sides. Something that I get a lot in my classroom is students not knowing how to hold a ruler, because a lot of the times whenever they line something up, they hold the ruler on one side and then it flexes and bends on the other side. How you hold a ruler correctly is you actually space out your fingers like this in the middle. That way, whenever you put pressure on one side, it doesn't tilt. On the other hand, if you put a lot of pressure right here and that's it, it doesn't matter how much pressure you put down, you can still very easily just move that out of the way. And I'm pushing down really hard on that. You can still move it. So make sure you put some pressure in the middle. You're not moving it like that. Okay, so that is how you make a grid. Make sure that you have your grid on your blank paper and you have the exact same grid on the picture that you're trying to draw. So you're going to need to have the grid on your original picture and on the blank picture.